Hi and welcome back to Microsoft Excel Skills for Farmers, brought to you by the Local Land Services and presented by Carmen Quaid from AgriFocused. This is the second video from week 1 of our 6-week course. So now you would have had all of your data nicely recorded in here. You may have 5 or 6 years of data or more in your spreadsheet, and it's starting to get long and cumbersome and potentially difficult to work with, despite the fact that we freeze the cells across the top. We're going to now look at a couple of ways of making the data easier to work with and starting to do a little bit of analysis on our rainfall data that might help us in our management decisions, reporting to other people within our farming businesses, and reporting to banks and other financiers. So what we're going to do now is actually group some of these cells. So we don't see the small data, we're only looking at the annual totals, because as we collect more data, the timing of these individual rainfall events within any one year in a 10, 20 or 30 year rainfall pattern becomes less meaningful. We're going to select these rows here to hide. So we're going hard left, putting down our left mouse button and scrolling down. And if you've done it correctly, you'll see that every row is hidden there. We go up to Data, and we go across to Group, and we press Group. And you'll see now some small dots have appeared down the side, and also this minus symbol. We'll click on that, and all of that information is then hidden. It's still there though. You can see it's still feeding into the formulas, and we can tell by the fact that the rows now go from 1, 2 to 34 that there are some hidden cells. If we want them to appear again, we press the plus. And this might be useful if you're doing a spreadsheet with individually tagged animals with specific production data recorded, and then you wanted to look at averages rather than 300 individual animals. You could just, for each mob, reduce that and hide that information, and then just work with your averages. We're going to do this again, scrolling down. Left button up to our Data tab, across to our Group tab, seeing the dots appear and the minus symbol, and reducing that. And now I have 2 years worth of data presented there. You may have 3 or 4 or 5 or even 10 as you progress through. We're now going to do a little bit of analysis on this data. We're going to add some columns along here. So each year on its own has meaning, but averages over time begin to have more meaning. So we're going to look at our average monthly rainfall, and to do that we can write another formula. We go equals average, then this cell and this cell. So we're telling Excel we want this cell to be the average of cell B34 and cell B66. Let's do that again. Equals average cell C34 and, as indicated by the cursor or the comma, cell C36. Close our brackets, enter. And there we have the average of those two cells. What you don't want to do is go equals average and select that range of cells when you have hidden cells. It looks fine, but what is actually happening is it's calculating the average between D34 and D66. If we had more data in there, just hide that again. You look at that, you know, just visually, that's not the average of 53 and 78. The average of 53 and 78 is not going to be 52. It's actually looking at all of those blank cells in there and looking at the, sorry, not the blank cells, it's looking at all the data cells in there and looking at the average, thinking that it's making an average between a smaller number of days. So make sure when you've got hidden cells, make sure when you're working with totals that you select the correct cells equals average of this cell and this cell. Great. And we can do the same thing we did with the months, copying that information across there. To give us our averages. Now when dealing with millimetres, we don't really want to see a decimal place in a report. So we go up to Home, we've got that text selected, and we reduce the decimal place. While we're here, and while we have that row selected, we also might want to change its appearance. Now I've shown you how to do borders, top and bottom. You might like to add a colour in and border to change the presentation of those cells. Now for the old timers over here, we're going to put some inches in. And for this we also do a formula, and we're looking at the mathematical sum. So we go equals this cell divided by 25.4, and that gives us our rainfall. Well, that doesn't look right. Sorry. There. And we look at that and think that doesn't look right, a 69-inch rainfall. So herein lies the beauty of Excel formulas, because we look back and we go, oh, 809 millimetres in August. That can't possibly be true. And here we've entered 778 mils, and we check back with our rainfall chart and work out we only actually had 78 mils there. And you see how, by virtue of the formula, our average millimetres is corrected, and our annual rainfall has corrected, and the inches have corrected without changing the formula, because all we changed was the data entry cells. Now it would be appropriate to do inches to 1 decimal place. So the other thing we might look at is stretching out this average column over here, so we can have the average of those two figures as well. You might also want to look at percentage of average. So here we're looking at our total rainfall over our average rainfall. And because of the small sample size, we're getting, and the consistency in the rainfall, a fairly consistent result there. But you can see as you build the data and as you map the variability of the rainfall on your property, you'll see a greater deal of variation there. So that's the total cell over the annual rainfall cell. And we know 1 is 100%. So very close to the average there. So just to improve this presentation a little bit further in the minute we've got left, we stretch our cursor over the whole chart and we press this merge and center button, and that centers that title neatly over the whole spreadsheet. So thank you for that. In our next video, part 3, we'll be looking at building the chart.